Imagine getting up every day full of energy as if you were in your 20s again. What would that be like? What would it be worth to you? What is your health worth to you? Think about it. Your health isn't everything, but without it, everything else is nothing. And yet, too many of us are taking it for granted until something goes wrong. And no one wakes up hoping to be diagnosed with a disease or chronic illness. And yet, we've never been taught how to be proactive in our health through our school or public health. As a registered health coach and integrative health practitioner, I believe it's time this information is made available to everyone. Combining new knowledge around your health and the ability to do my functional medicine lab tests in the comfort of your own home will allow you to optimize your health for today and all your tomorrows. Don't wait for your wake-up call. Welcome back to another episode of the Don't Wait for Your Wake-Up Call podcast. I am excited to introduce you to my guest today, Cheryl Whitelaw. Welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Hi, Melissa. It's great to be with you today.
And I realized I just said Whitelaw. Your last name is Whitelaw, so apologies for that. Cheryl Whitelaw is joining us today. And we're excited to have you. And Cheryl is a Move More Without Regret coach and CEO of Peace and Power Movement Services. Her clients desire to live with vitality, to grow as they age, and often are recovering from life-changing injuries, trauma, or health conditions like MS or fibromyalgia. Her kind power is supporting people to improve their balance and mobility. When their movement improves, their life gets bigger. And how true is that? We were just before we started recording talking about the fact that, all of the neuroscience, all of the longevity science is showing that movement of the human body is so critical to our health. And yet so many people, unfortunately, are spending way too much time on the couch, whether by choice or as a result of injury and lack of movement. And so I love that you help people regain their health so they can move. And there's always a story as to why we do what we do. So I would love for you to share what led you into this line of work.
Yeah, no, thanks, Melissa. And it's, movement is one of those things, like it's so close to us, it's kind of hard to see clearly, right? Because, we grab our bottle, we do our phone, like we move all the time, and we kind of do that in a really unconscious way. And so I have to say, like I was like so many people, I did physical fitness things when I was younger, I had a desk job, but I really started to crazy early, like mid 30s. I lived in a place where I had to go down the stairs every morning to the kitchen, and I couldn't do it. I had to go one step at a time. My ankles were so stiff, and it was, I didn't really know why. Because I was in all the guidelines, I was generally physically fit, generally healthy. There was nothing going on, but I had this early sort of relationship with stiffness that really, at the beginning, I can't say, oh, I had this revelation. And it was more like, well, that's weird. Like, what's going on there? As I advanced in my career, and it became clear that, I was a dean for a while at a 2-year college, and the kind of workload days, 12-hour days were typical. It was like, okay, I have to actually do something to support my movement health, because I literally am not, I'm working through lunch, I'm working long days, I'm just not attending to it. And so managed to connect with a really great progressive Pilates instructor who kind of helped me fill in the black box of my body.
Right.
And so it was a 10-year build. In some sense, I'm a really slow body learner, because I didn't know what I wasn't paying attention to, right? Because your body's right here, you look at it in the mirror, you think, oh, I know all about it. And I didn't know what the mystery was.
I think that's the case for all of us, really. Yeah. We simply don't know what we don't know, right? Mm-hmm. When I got into health coaching, I was in the same boat going, wait a minute, how am I in my 40s and I don't know all of this about my own body?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's true for many of us. So I love that you're here sharing this so that listeners can hear this and have their own revelations about what's going on for them based on your story. So keep going.
Yeah. No, and so it was a slow build to really become aware that I could pay attention to my body, not just when it hurt or when it was tired or hungry, like, the sort of, I call it kind of like the toddler tantrum level of listening to your body, when your body's like, hey, mom, hey, mom, hey, mom, and then you pay attention. It's like when you really start to learn to listen to your body, you open up this kind of somatic intelligence relationship that I'm so jazzed, because my Pilates work was very healing, really brought me in. But then I connected to a teacher I'm 10 years later still working with today, who teaches Aikido and Tai Chi and Qigong and meditation. And he's really been an influencer for me about seeing how far that integration can go, right? That mind body integration, and literally how when the relationship, I guess it's like a really good deep marriage, like when you're really married to your own body in a way where there's care and love and attention and tending, there's a somatic intelligence that comes out to support you, that I have to say, like when I started with my little stiff ankles, I had no idea that there was this kind of wisdom within me, because I kind of treated my body like, an irritating toddler that, yes, I had to kind of take care of it, but mostly, it was kind of cranky, and I didn't know why. Like, can't you just go play in the corner, right? I'm over here doing my things. So it's
I think really is you take it for granted, right? Because
totally.
it's always there. So we just take it for granted until it has to scream loud enough for us to be able to hear it, right? And I always love to say, listen to your body when it whispers, so it doesn't have to yell at you.
Yeah.
And if you have that relationship and that understanding of the innate wisdom that we do have within our body, because it can heal itself, that when we listen to that, we're even listening and paying attention even before it's getting to a whispering state of a symptom.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like it completely changes the conversation, and changes, if you can hear the early whisper of an imbalance, of, a kind of level of fatigue, or, that there's a need for nurturing replenishment. It's a way to look at resilience that isn't kind of, there's often this kind of like far end commando, like I can get through anything and then I stop and I live to fight another day. That's one expression of resilience, this kinder, softer, and in my experience, much more powerful, like quiet confidence to say, I trust in myself and my body, and that together there's a lot of information available if I listen that helps me make really good decisions out of like a deeply grounded and a deeply centered place that I find is good for me, but it's often incredibly good for sort of the people around me, the environment. It's like this win-win wisdom that comes through, because we're doing things that support us. So it's, some people, when I talk about that, they go, well, that sounds really selfish. And it's like, strangely, I find that it's much more giving than being self-centered in that quality.
Absolutely. And I used to think self-care was the most selfish thing, right? That's kind of how I grew up thinking about it, until, again, I got to health coaching school and I had that whole paradigm flipped on its head when I was taught it's the most selfless act because it allows you to show up and give the world the best of you instead of what's left of you. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about here. Because when you feel good in your body and you've got good mobility, you have more energy, because being in pain takes energy, physical energy and mental energy, right? You can't focus if you've got this underlying pain going on, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you look after yourself, you are then so much better able to care for others and support others as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's, like I'm in a period right now, next February will be 10 years that I've been training Aikido. So it's a Japanese martial art.
Yeah.
And so as my training regime, like this last several months before the test, like the demand is building. And so I have to just make sure that my support rises with me.
Yes.
Like I do train regularly, but not this intensely all the time, right? Like it's, there's an ebb and flow, but it's been a really great way to look at, okay, given the intensity of what I'm about to do, like I'm going to travel next weekend to train for 12 hours, right? So what does it mean to go through the intensive weekend and know that I'm going to bring care, like self-care along with that, so I can actually enjoy it and not just kind of suffer through and collapse at the end.
And I love that. And again, I talk the same story in a slightly different way, but I talk about stress being a legal scale, right? And we're always going to have stress in our life, and there's good stress and there's bad stress, but we want our stress to be in balance. Mm-hmm. And if we're going into a situation where we have higher stress, then in order to bring it into balance, we have to raise our self-care. Right? And we can plan that. If we know we have high stress times in our work life or whatever, then we need to just be planning in more self-care. And then in lower stress times, maybe we don't need as much self-care, but keeping it in balance. And that's exactly what you're doing. Even the Aikido, it's fun, it's movement, it's great for your body, it's good physical exercise, but it's also very demanding, which puts stress on the body. And therefore, you are looking at how can I raise my self-care in order to be able to get through that without being fully exhausted.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I love that. Very, very good points to make. And good luck with your 10-year Aikido competition. That's super exciting.
Yeah, no, it's a huge, literally, I've done several ventures in my life. This is the single largest effort towards this path. So I'm excited, nervous, the whole
right. And is this for your black belt?
It is.
Nice. Yeah. That's wonderful. Yeah. And so, talking about Aikido, what has it taught you in terms of, the difference between power and force? I was raised in Japan. I'm familiar with Aikido. And so I'm familiar with these terms too. Sometimes I'll use flow and force but yeah, share about what that has taught you, because I think those are really key points as well.
No, and we could talk for hours on this one. When I think about just even coming together with language about kind power, I definitely grew up with an idea that force was sort of rough, harsh, and it meant someone wins, there's power over someone, and someone loses. And the Aikido experience has fundamentally taught me about an expression of power that's about power with.
Right.
And seeks to exercise power, or, to use the word force, because there's absolute, like in a physics sense, there's absolutely forces happening in an Aikido interaction, but that you're seeking to maintain your own balance, your own kind of internal, I would say, equipoise. So it's a mental stillness, an emotional openness, and a kind of gut level centeredness and groundedness that in many ways nothing can disturb, right? That you're on this kind of practice path to cultivate this quality. And when you're in that state, there's this creative potential that just can expand and flow out of you. So as someone, we practice a variety of techniques. So when someone comes with a punch or a cut, or that you can just express out this kind of personal power that brings the other person with you, takes care of the martial situation, right? Like neutralizes the attack, but without an aggression aftertaste, without any need to brutalize, the other person to win, simply to enact this kind of, it's almost like you create a two-person system in which there are forces coming in and you're seeking balance through that, but with, martial techniques that actually take care of things like punches and kicks and attacks and that sort of thing.
Right.
So, because many people want it to be a really peaceful art. And I would say the experience of that internal calm and peace is amazing. But it is a martial art. Like, we don't go and pick daisies and, like we actually attack each other with weapons and things,
Right. But what I love about that is that you can do that from that place of groundedness, calm, and peace, and without all of the aggression.
Yeah.
And then learn the skills to counter someone else's attack such that you're jockeying with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the back and forth. And because it's not, a real situation where you're in fear of life or death, right? Mm-hmm. You can actually work together in the process of taking turns as the attacker and the counterattacker.
Yeah.
But from that place of groundedness.
No, and we often talk about connection in Aikido because it's predicated on literally someone grabs me, like whatever the form is, and we make use of that connection. But what I also find the longer that I train is it's also setting up your somatic intelligence to maintain the connection to the ground, and I would say up into however you conceive of the universe, and to become a connection that then can express out. And so again, it can be a highly compelling form of power in terms of physically throwing someone, but it's not forceful. It often feels delightful to be thrown by someone who has that quality of connection. I've trained with, lifetime teachers who it feels like a really big hug. Like he was like, do it again, because it's just so embracing. But you notice that your feet have left the ground and you're looking at the ceiling and you're, like it's absolutely moves you, but it's a delightful feeling. And so it's one of these, arts that when I talk about kind power, to say, so you don't have to go train Aikido. I mean, it's a long path, like at 10 years, I'm now ready to start studying Aikido, right? Like this is the learning journey. But there's lots of things you can take in terms of how you even approach trying something to find, is there a more easeful way to do it? Can you find that sense of connection in yourself, that sense of balancing? That's a dynamic thing, so that you have that kind of ease to, go through your shopping day with a shopping cart, or even in traffic and driving, like that you can embody those qualities, and it changes how you relate to what you're facing.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And so in your healing journey, you did Pilates, then you've moved into Aikido, and now you're also working with others and helping them to heal. And you use 4 verbs: thinking, feeling, sensing, moving. So talk to me more about that and how you bring those verbs into the work that you do with others that you're helping to regain their mobility and therefore vitality.
Yeah. I mean, I often say to people, I help you do your verbs better, whatever that, might be. And what I do find, and this way of talking about it is embedded in a Feldenkrais method. So Moshe Feldenkrais used these verbs to address what wholeness meant in a very functional way. He was funny about seeing everything highly functionally. What I really noticed with clients, and I had a client say to the other day, I really was a walking head, right? So I'm thinking, some feeling, working on that kind of emotional intelligence, but the whole, like, my capacity to extend my awareness to sensory inputs, like how lovely a piece of velvet feels, or the sensory feeling of like a really great milkshake, that's kind of not on the table. Like, again, other than at that kind of toddler tantrum, like I notice something sharp or hard or a little bit of delicious, but it's a flat experience. And I don't notice moving. Like I somehow got up and got to the door and got to my car, but there's no awareness extended to those experiences. And so and we're in a kind of environment, like the way our office lives are set up, or where, a computer is really designed to keep us immobile, thinking, visually oriented, but all, like, even hearing, unless we listen to music or listen to nature, like it kind of channels us into some sensory experiences and not others at all. Mm-hmm. And so the big issue with that is we do have a neuroplastic brain, and how we use ourselves literally shapes the structure and the chemistry of the brain. So as we age, if we don't use it, it gets pruned, at a shocking rate. And so my favorite personal story of coming into a degree of wholeness, one day, I work at home and I tend to have little slippers on, and I thought, what? Something's on my foot. Like, did I step on a sticky? So I'm looking at the bottom of my foot. So this is, I admit it was a 3-day journey to go, like, what am I feeling? And I realized I had awakened some of the pressure and mechanical receptors in my feet and my ankles and my skin. So I was actually feeling the grain on the floor, like I would with my hands, with my fingertip. I didn't know that had turned off, because I generally feel the floor, like I'm clear, but it was a degree of sensitivity that it was sort of like, oh, with this information, my balance can, like my sense of balance can improve in a huge magnitude, because I actually can feel in very fine degrees unevenness. If I'm starting to step on something, like it was this funny little mundane but huge awakening of, oh, that's what it feels like to come back into a greater sense of just personal wholeness. And so what I find with people is they often come in the door with at least 2 of those 4 going. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's moving and thinking, but to help them sort of find, like, how does all of that intelligence work together? Because I got to tell you, when it all works together, we function on a whole other level.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And the thinking is very connected to the conscious mind, whereas the feeling and the sensing is much more connected to the unconscious mind, which we aren't taught about. And so, I work with that in many of the techniques that I use, and realize and know that it's 90% of our mind. And yet, because we're not taught it through the school system and through society, we're not tapping into the power of the unconscious mind as much. And on top of that, we have society very often telling us to squash our emotions down. Don't show them, don't feel them. And we end up burying them, sometimes in food that makes us feel better momentarily. And they, over the course of a lifetime, become toxic too. And so I love this work that you're doing, is just, as you say, introducing all 4 of these verbs to allow people to live more fully and get more in touch with their entire being as you work with them at a holistic level.
Yeah. I started calling it a few years ago perceptual hygiene, because we filter out what's not important.
Yes.
And when we say we lean into thinking and feeling as sort of the primary, so we have more neural connections happening in service of those functions, and we do start to lose some of the movement capacities, not in some kind of ultimate way, but those connections, we have a part of our brain that every night, like, is going through and cleaning up what wasn't really strengthened. And so it absolutely, that perception creates reality, that the longer we go in the kind of way we've blinkered ourselves, we become that person. So I become a thinker feeler, not a mover sensor. And so we build a story about who we are and our sense of self, so that our conscious mind is literally with our unconscious mind, both of them have kind of paired up to say, so we're this person and we don't do this. And so it's a story, it's constructed, it could be changed, but we kind of start to say, this is just how it is, this is who I am. So when problems come up, like as you say, toxicity, problems with, a knee joint that gets overused or inflamed and we're not aware of it, then we put all the blame on the thing rather than looking at this imbalance, between these four verbs. And so it's amazing, when I work with people to shift that balance, they'll come in and at someone this week, like my sciatica's aired up again. I'm going on a long plane trip. I'm really nervous about it. And so we did a balancing thing that in fact, we did nothing specific with that part of the body.
Right.
And she was able to, at the end, go, oh, like it's really dropped down. And I have tools now to go on this 9-hour plane flight or whatever and work with myself so that I can keep enough balance to not be in pain and sit in a kind of miseried way, on a long flight.
And I think that's so often the case when our body is talking to us, in that when the place where we feel the pain isn't the root cause, we have to look deeper as to what's going on that has triggered that. It's never as simple as my knee hurts, so I'll fix my knee. Yeah. There's always deeper layers that we have to be addressing. We might be able to temporarily do something to support the knee, but if we don't address the deeper layers, then that knee pain keeps coming back again and again, because the body's saying, you haven't addressed it where I wanted you to address it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And so you're almost like the interpreter of the body for people, helping them to understand what the body truly needs.
Yeah. Well, and I would sort of say like interpreter, and I would say I tend to get people involved in a kind of co-discovery expedition. So that, because I'm not coming from a place where I diagnose people, right, or kind of say, here's what's wrong. But when they present sort of a snapshot of their functional movement day and what they see going on, I certainly listen and attend to what they're telling me, because there's lots of clues in that. But I also kind of say, so given what I see, given what I'm hearing, if they're in doing, I work online and in person. So if we're doing touch, I also take those inputs to say, so what if it's something like an imbalance in terms of how this person's using their spine in certain movements? And if that's the hypothesis, how could we explore that to see what the impact is? And so depending on the client, the way that happens can vary. But I'm always looking for, how can I bring them with me in that exploration so that we learn together? Because I can't possibly know the million and millions of things that have conditioned them to show up in the way they're showing up with me today. And so, it's one of those things that, they're right there in their body, but we don't know, right? Like there is a kind of black box mystery. And so it's like, let's go on that mystery together and see, given what we know, what we can find out that will make a difference. It's always coming back to improving their function, improving one of those verbs, improving the balance of them so that they feel better. It's easier, less pain. It gives them the kind of body that they actually want to move in.
It's beautiful. And so you're guiding them, because they know their body best, but they don't know necessarily what's going on. So you can guide them to discover that.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. And then get people moving again, which, as we've said, is so critical.
Yeah.
Sitting is the new smoking, as we've said, in terms of, we know what smoking does to our health and the mortality rate from smoking, et cetera, et cetera. And now we're moving into that sitting is doing the same thing. It is causing us to have a shorter life, unfortunately. right?
No, absolutely. They've sort of flipped. I mean, for years, the research was focused on the number of minutes of activity. And when I flipped the research question to look at the number of minutes of sedentary behavior, the results became radically worse for
Yes.
that outcome, which was fascinating. That the assumption that if I do 30 minutes a day, I'm good. Not if the rest of the day is entirely sedentary. It's just not enough movement.
Right.
Yeah.
Our bodies are designed to move throughout the day. And if we go back to our hunter-gatherer days, they were always moving in search of food, etc., right? And now these sitting in offices, staring at screens, sitting in a chair all day is causing real problems and literally shortening our lives.
Yeah.
And so where can people build in movement? It's such a key piece to lengthening our lives. And then for those that have injury that it's hard to move, I love the work that you're doing to help them recover so that they can get back to a place where movement becomes easy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And so how can you learn to care for yourself through movement that we're talking about here?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And people always kind of assume like self-care is the thing you do before and afterwards,
right.
Like you might drink a nutrient, electrolyte drink, or, then you have a bubble bath or, something afterwards. The way that I really like to work with people about, balancing these four verbs is to really support them to actually bring their awareness into what they're doing. And, I would say Moshe Feldenkrais's, one of his most famous lines is, you can do what you want when you know what you're doing. Right. And so often I'm either teaching in a group class or one-on-one, having them do movement explorations that are not familiar, that are unusual combinations. So a basic example, if you cross your fingers, we tend to have a way we do it. And so if we switch, that often feels odd. It's, this is automatic. This is like, okay, I just did it, but this one goes under. That novelty is interesting to the brain and the nervous system. So keeping them on an edge of a kind of novelty exploration that includes some degree of challenge so that it sets up the conditions they have to learn something, right?
Yeah, so, I have that in my yoga classes that I do. Yeah. They'll say cross your legs one way, and then they make sure you do it the other way as well, because otherwise we're creatures of habits, and we'll just always cross our legs the same way. Or sitting in the lotus position, one leg goes on top of the other. You do it the same way every time until someone tells you, do it the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you take like neuroplasticity is real. If you're only doing it this way, you're literally building the nervous system, the motor neuron pathway. This is possible. And this is weird and awkward. Right. Yeah. And so, leading them through that, but always building their sense of their awareness to notice relationships, to notice a rich range of sensory input. So it could be temperature, length, dimension, pressure, the quality of movement, the timing, the pacing, like giving them a whole bunch of rich inputs so that they're richly experiencing their own movement, all designed to literally wake up, so if the connections are there, they're strengthened. If they're not there, they can be created and nurtured so that they literally are building their mind-body intelligence structurally in the brain, chemically first and then structurally, so that they literally have more to pay attention to it. The other thing that I really like to do with people is use language, images, analogies that give them a relatable, easy access to a quality. So, did a series a while ago about stiff necks, like people hold a lot of tension. It can be related to mental habits, emotional habits, breathing habits, how we use our phone. Like there's many things. and so I sort of, gave an image once that I had a client just come back to me say, imagine you have a long black cat that's just purring and draped over your neck, right?
Yeah.
And just to have a sort of, it's imaginative. Maybe they've had that experience, maybe they haven't, but just imagining it changes how much tension people hold there.
Right.
And it's one of the kind of, one of the places where incredibly powerful is that just using our attention or awareness that way changes the tissues of our body. Like, so building, like practicing that builds their capacity to go, oh, I've gone back into that, like 3 p.m. I'm tighter, and I can reverse that, right? I can send my tension out because I have that kind of relationship with my body. That somatic intelligence allows me to just imagine it, and it makes the change. And so with that kind of practice and the elaborative, repetition, it's not a rote thing. It's like, oh, I notice it here, I notice it there, I can be creative with it. We literally create ourselves in that way. So it's this amazing kind of personal power that it's right there, and we don't often use it.
I love that. And in my work, I will often say that the body is a robot of the mind.
Yeah.
In that whatever we are envisioning, imagining, the body will respond to biochemically, physiologically, etc. Which is why if you can imagine that beautiful, long, sleek black cat purring on your neck, keeping it nice and warm, that just allows your shoulders to drop, your breathing to calm, etc., etc. And in that process, you're able to release the pain. So beautiful. I love all of this work that you do. We could talk forever, and but I want to honor your time. And so as we wrap up this episode, tell me, what does "don't wait for your wake-up call" mean to you?
Yeah, it's, for me, I really, it just kind of breaks my heart to see people that I've cared about, friends, family, colleagues, that just don't move. And so, I'm 55 today, and when I see them, I see their aging process ramping up, right? Just purely from the lack of, they don't have to be athletes, they don't have to run a marathon, but just being active in some kind of meaningful way every day. And I'm watching them change. Like, I'm watching them become old, at an age where, I'm stronger, more flexible, like, and it's not about comparing, but like at 30 and my stiff ankled self, I could have never imagined living the movement life. So I just really, that wake up call is when you wait till you really do have arthritis, or you wait till, there really are a requirement to replace a hip, or, like the big wake up calls like that. There's so much that could be changed on that path for the better. And the impacts of aging could be so much less. And so that's what, for me, like this wake up call is like, don't wait for the diagnosis, the extreme, like the toddler who's had a tantrum and now is getting out a gun or something to, like to really get serious about it. Like, don't wait for that kind of, self-violence to happen. Like, we can find a gentler, kinder path much earlier.
Absolutely. And when we wait, it takes so much longer to heal from than when we work on the kinder, gentler path along the way. And I'm the same as you. I'm 55. And because of all of the training I've done in the last 8 years since I got out of the corporate world and all the lifestyle changes I've made, I have more energy, feel better in my body, move more than I ever did before. And I feel younger than I did, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And society teaches us that as we age, we are supposed to feel worse, right? And people will often ignore symptoms and just say, oh, it's aging, or it sucks to get old. But it doesn't have to be that way. That's not actually how the body's designed. Our body can go a lot longer than we think. The average lifespan is 79 years in North America, I believe. And I think that's for men, and women are a little bit longer. We can actually live a whole lot longer than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't remember what it was, but I heard something recently that mammals' lifespan, there was a factor or an equation for calculating the lifespan of a mammal. And if you use that factor and applied it to humans, it should be 125.
Right. Yeah.
But we're not living there because of the lifestyle factors that are impeding us, and we're not honoring our body and being proactive in our choices in regards to our movement and our health, etc. Yeah. But when we start to do that, we can live a lot longer. And when we stop ignoring the symptoms and getting curious, what's going on and how can I resolve this and who can I get to help me, we can have good mobility and live a long life of vitality. So I love the work that you do, because you're helping people do that as more and more people realize life is short and I want more life. Yeah. And I want it to be good. I want to feel comfortable. And I want to be able to move my body. So it's wonderful. So if people want to work with you, how can they get hold of you?
Yeah. So you can check out my website. It's peaceandpower.ca. I'm up in Canada, so I have a CA designation. I've got a YouTube channel. So if you search Peace and Power Movement Services, tons of free videos with kind of micro movement explorations to, improve various things. You can just search, how do I help my low back, right? And you'll get videos that come up with that. Yeah.
Beautiful. And so I have that in the show notes for listeners. And you are also very generously offering a free gift, Embrace Aging Manifesto. So let the audience know about that.
Yeah. So it's a really easy to read guide. I'm a bit of a neuroscience geek, and so love delving into that. But I also like kind of translating out that here's the practical thing. So it's 5 choices that the latest, like in the last 2 years, research is showing if you do these things, you're choosing to age wisely with vitality. And they're pretty simple. So like the simple solution sort of belies some of the science behind it. But it really, it's the kind of differences that will make a difference for your life.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for offering that. And I will definitely be checking it out. And is there any last message you would like to leave with the audience today?
Well, I really resonated, with your sort of message about, guided health journey, to really position health as a wellness verb, right? Like we have so much language that's related to illness and being sick and recovery. We don't have, kind of like peace. We don't have a lot of verbiage that tells us what to do to be whole, to be well, to live in a peaceful sort of way. So, think about what you're investing in that part of your health journey, not just the fix it. It's like if we have a house, the furnace goes, we got to fix it. Like what makes it beautiful? What makes it worth living? And have that as a focus of investment as well.
That's beautiful and great advice. And thank you so much, Cheryl, for coming today and sharing your wisdom. And I want to thank my audience for tuning in every week. And I hope you found today's podcast inspiring and maybe a few ahas that might have you start thinking differently. And if you know someone else that needs to hear this episode, please share it with them. Thank you as always. Are you a practitioner or a coach listening to this? If so, I would love to ask you, do you use hypnotherapy in your practice working with clients? And if not, would you like to? The power of hypnotherapy is limitless. And so often we experience our clients struggling to reach their goals. It's because they're coming up against their own brick walls and getting stuck. But you can help them through the power of hypnosis break through all of that, working with their unconscious mind to put the suggestions in, to have them taking the action to achieve the results that they want. They are thrilled with your coaching techniques. They're getting the results they want. You feel amazing because you are helping your client get the results they want. It's a win-win, And another win is that it's an added revenue stream for you in your business. So if you like the feel of helping your clients get the results they want, if you like the sound of that, then definitely reach out, Melissa at yourguidedhealthjourney.com, or click the Linktree link below for my Unlimited Power of Hypnosis class to learn more. It's a weekend designation program that I teach, valid in 42 countries. You write an exam after taking the experiential course, and you can be admitted to the American Board of Hypnotherapy and start using hypnotherapy one-to-one with your clients and have them achieving the results they want.